Hello, everybody, and welcome to this video going through our Google Admin remote support and training services for schools. I'm here with James Sayer from Appsevents. How's it going, James?
Yeah, good, Dan. Thank you very much.
Great. And we've also got Peter Horner and Charlie Love. Peter Horner and Charlie Love are our lead Google Tech experts who manage the services. They've both got decades of Google Admin experiences for large installations, thousands of student installations. So Charlie and Peter, welcome to the call.
Great. Good to be here, Dan. Thanks.
Yeah, good to be here, Dan. Nice to see you.
So James, our Google Admin Remote Support and Training, what is it? So basically, this is a service that supports school IT directors, tech directors, to get the most out of their tech support teams. And it gets them access to Appsevents technical team members and ensures that the school admin team operate at a consistently high level. It provides continuity. If you get staff turnover, tech team, there's always staff turnover. It means everybody's trained up. And also it means your domain is secure. You get support and you get training.
Just to add in there, Dan, obviously you and I have both been admins for school domains in the past. Peter and Charlie are current admins and they run the remote admin. But we've really noticed that Google has evolved, the complexity of the tools have evolved as well, and the demand for this remote admin has increased accordingly.
Yeah, definitely. We're actually providing this service for schools in the US, in the UK, and international schools. So all the kind of English-speaking schools of the world, we operate the service.
So just a very quick overview of what the Google Remote Support and Training Service may look like for you. Typically, we would kick off with a security audit. And Peter's going to talk in more depth about this in a moment. Very, very high level. It goes through every setting within your Google Admin console and uncovers any security issues you may have or compliance issues. And you can inform us also as well if you want us to look specifically at something, perhaps APIs which are connected or apps that you have enabled on the domain. So that's the security audit. And we use that to inform upon the service we're then going to provide to the school. This audit is free. It's free to all remote support customers and schools. Then we use all of those results to inform how we're going to deliver the service over the next year. The service involves a private chat support space, and this is only for the school. You can have all of your Google admins in there. You feel free to have your school leadership in there as well. And that is staffed by ourselves, Peter, Charlie, Dan, and myself, plus our other admins are in the chat support space. In addition to that, you have regular Meet calls. So we have video calls with you, depending on the level of service you are engaged with. We have regular Meet calls with you. And you also are, of course, a valued member of our Google technical community.
Yeah, and just a couple of things to add to that. Firstly, so the Google technical community, you can add your whole team. It's possible to join for free, only for tech directors of schools using Google, but this is your whole team gets access to our technical community.
Now, what we've noticed has been increasing demand for schools looking for a fully remote Google admin. And there are a couple of instances where this is very, very powerful for schools. Perhaps they have a smaller tech team and they need the additional support of a remote Google admin. Or maybe the complexities of a service just require that additional support. You may have 5 or 10 admins already, but you just want to have and the technical word for this, I think, Charlie, is it professional collaboration engineer? What is the latest certification?
I think it's, is it Cloud Collaboration Engineers?
Yeah, so Google's just relaunched its certifications. Peter, Charlie, and ourselves are all going through these again. And so if you want to have the latest certified admin on your team as well, we also offer a full remote admin service. We'll talk about that a little bit more at the end of the call. Before we get to that, I'm going to hand over to Peter now, because Peter's actually run many audits, and I think you have a few ongoing at the moment as well, Peter.
Yeah, absolutely, James. We've always got some audits we're conducting for schools. It's been a really popular service. So it's something we created last year in conjunction with Google and a Chrome Enterprise team. So we had created it in full collaboration with Google. And lots of schools have really benefited from this. Schools who undertake this service, they get a really comprehensive report which covers hundreds of settings in the admin console, covering everything from how you handle Gmail configuration, Google Meet configuration, how sharing happens in your domain, or how you handle identity and authentication. And it's worth mentioning that this service is a standalone service, but as we mentioned earlier, it is also included for free as part of the support offering we offer at Appsevents.
Yeah, and just to say as well, it's we include this annually. So we do this. We kick off our engagement with you with the audit, and then we repeat it every year. So it gets quicker as we go because a lot of issues are solved. But given the changing nature of Google, it's good to repeat it every year because there's always new things to watch out for.
Absolutely, that's a great point. The audit is always evolving. Firstly, from the changes which happen at Google with new features and products being launched, but also from what we're learning and about the latest cybersecurity threats and latest best practices. So in terms of the audit, this is what it looks like. We kick off with a meeting with the school. We learn a little bit about what you want to achieve out of it, and we get to tell you in more detail about what's going to happen in the audit. Then we launch into the full audit. That normally takes from 3 to 5 days, depending on the size of domain. And once we've collected all that data and created our report, we'll present that back to you and give you the opportunity to ask questions about that. And then after that meeting, we schedule an implementation workshop if you've just bought the standalone version of this audit, or if you are a remote support customer, then all the data from this audit we'll use to set the agenda of our support calls in the future. So now we're just going to have a look at what we do in a bit more detail. So at that project kickoff meeting, it's an opportunity for us to really learn about this school and how you manage your Google Admin Console. So things like, how are you creating your users? How do you offboard users? Are there any challenges you're experiencing? Is there anything in particular you really wanted us to look at as part of the audit? So this is a really useful meeting just for us to get to know the school and you, and also for you to ask us questions about what's going to happen. In terms of what we audit looks at, so we look at adoption and storage. So that's looking at things like how much are your users using different Workspace services? Is there anything which could be better utilized? Are you getting the most out of their Education Plus licenses you might be using? We also look at storage, which is an important area now that it's not unlimited from Google. We look at identity and authentication. We look at how you manage your admins, particularly your super admins. We look at any third-party integrations. So that's other third-party services you and your users might be using your Google Workspace accounts for. That's quite a key area to look at. We look at how different Workspace services are configured. Are they configured using best practices? Is there any improvements we could make there? We look at how devices are managed. So that's not just looking at Chromebooks, but also whether you're using your admin console to manage Windows, iOS, or Android devices. And then lastly, we finish by looking at reporting and investigations and compliance. And then at the end of that process, so we collect all of that data, hundreds of settings across the admin console, and we put it into a really comprehensive report. We list out each of those settings, but we provide a summary for each of those topics with a list of our recommendations. Each recommendation is backed up with a help article from Google, going into that in more detail. And schools find this a really useful report. It provides a point-in-time snapshot of how everything's configured in your admin console, and it provides us with a working document we can then use with schools who are using a remote support service to track these changes as we go through and resolve each of those issues. So yeah, schools have really found this to be a really useful report.
And it's pretty long as well, isn't it, Peter? I mean, we talk about hundreds of settings here. I mean, how long is it? How long is the report in the end?
It's anywhere from 30 to 50 plus pages. But we when we write to it, we write it in really
exactly,
yeah.
I think it's important to say we don't just give you the report. This report provides, first of all, we have a workshop at the end, but then this report provides the basis for our ongoing remote support and admin training service. So we implement all the changes together.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to say, for the standalone audit, we conduct an implementation workshop where we help you, the school, implement the key findings and set a schedule for implementing the other findings. But if it's part of the remote support service, then we're with you every step of the way, implementing those findings and getting your domain working at the best possible way and highest possible level.
And I think that's a great segue back to us. So from the audit, the implementation workshop, it's a great segue for us to talk a little bit more about the remote support.
Yeah. So sorry, James, carry on.
Actually, Dan, I'll hand over to you.
So one of there's two kind of fundamental parts of this. One is the meet calls, and secondly is our private chat support space. So in terms of the meet calls, this is really to allow us to create an ongoing training program for all your admins. And these calls, on one side, they're ongoing training calls, but on the other side, they're ongoing support calls. So essentially, we schedule 2 calls a month. Together with your team, we work out a time that's convenient. And in the beginning, the most important thing is to work on the findings from the security audit. So we go through that and we work out a training and implementation plan based on these to train the tech team on all the things we found from the audit. Following this, we create a custom ongoing training plan. So we work out a plan covering all aspects of the admin console. And remember, the thing about Google Admin is it's always changing. So there's constantly new things to do. We also use the calls to outline new features. So every month there's new features. We outline the features, go through best practice. And it's very important to say that we can and we do. I mean, Peter and Charlie can mention more about it. We can modify the calls at any point. Often schools have a topic they want to dive into. Maybe it's a problem. Maybe it's some new settings they want to configure. They let us know, and we refocus the call on training and guidance for that topic, whatever the topic is.
The safety net that we provide for schools with remote admin doesn't just stop at the meet calls. Even though we have scheduled meet calls, and we can jump on ad hoc calls as well with the team if there's an urgent situation or something to solve. We also have the private chat support space, and this is really, really powerful for teams. We found that this can actually be more powerful than having a formalized help desk. With a chat space, you have your whole team there viewing the support query that you're submitting. And we also have, obviously, our team there responding to those queries. But it continues, just as a chat space word, it's a thread of your query, and maybe that becomes more in-depth, and it's very, very easy for us to respond to. All of your tech team is inside the chat space. Anything related to Google can be addressed. So it could be from your email settings, your domain settings, for example, your DMARC, your SPF settings, all the way through to Chrome license settings. If there is an urgent need for priority response, just label it as priority, and we of course respond to that in the shortest time. We're also able to guide on security threats. So if there's a new issue that comes up, possibly announced by Google as a specific security threat, we're able to advise on that within the chat space. There's no need to wait for a scheduled call. But if you do need that priority call, we can set that up. Okay, Dan, is there anything else we should mention about the chat support space?
No, I think The really good thing for those who haven't used Google Spaces, the great thing is it's accessible from within your Gmail. So it's actually much more convenient than using a separate ticketing system. It's easy to access. You can quickly type a query if you're working on something else. You can easily search all the threads and all the things we've discussed in the past. So we've made it for the utmost convenience. We want it to be something that you can use as a resource on a daily basis.
Okay, so we just spent a few minutes summarizing our admin support and training service. And as we've been providing this to more and more schools, we've seen a demand for something more comprehensive than that. And we're just going to spend the last minute or two of this call just to talk about our full remote Google admin service. And that's where Appsevents essentially is your Google admin. So we actually become your super administrator on your domain. Being the super admin for your domain essentially means that we can perform every task on your domain, whether it's running a search and discovery on Gmail, whether it's provisioning users using GAM. It really encompasses absolutely everything on your domain. And we can see all of the features listed down here. Peter, do you want to mention anything about our fully remote Google admin service and how it can benefit the school?
Yeah, absolutely. So a key thing we look at as part of this is also how we can improve services. So can we automate things like user lifecycle management to really get that working in the best possible way? But yeah, schools have really finding a need for this service now, particularly as it's quite hard to recruit new staff who have got these skills already. So this can be a really beneficial service for those schools who are either got a small tech team or having trouble recruiting someone who's already got these skills.
Actually, Charlie, just to draw you into that conversation, what about for a school or even a group of schools that has a fairly substantial tech team? How could this benefit those larger schools or larger domains?
So I think it's getting access to that decade's worth of knowledge that you've got in the Appsevents team to support Google Workspace and to support the admin, and pulling in that information that we've got kind of globally around ways of working, the automation that Peter's mentioned, and by collaborating, on the administration, there's learning for your team, but also there's, if you're a school leader, there's reassurance for you that you've got world-class support for your group of schools or your establishment.
Yeah, one thing to add to that, I think a really great point, Charlie. The real difference in terms of Appsevents, in terms for those who aren't familiar with Appsevents, is we're 100% education organization. We've got a PD background and a technical background. We're all former educators, and so we really bring that education focused. And like Charlie said, because we operate both all in the UK, in the US, and with international schools, we bring a lot of best practice that we see from different parts of the world that people who only operate in one country often don't get that breadth of knowledge and best practice across countries.
Yeah, just to add to that, I mean, we work with international schools across Europe, Middle East, and of course, Asia. And we do routinely get requests from schools which are perhaps they're working with a enterprise Google partner and missing out on that understanding of how schools and school organizations work is quite a challenge for them. And so quite often they do come to work with us.
Great. Well, thank you very much. We hope you enjoyed this call. If you've got any questions, please get in touch with us. Leave a comment. Email me at dan@appsevents.com. And we look forward to talking to you. Thank you very much, guys.
Thanks, everyone.